you know what the answer is. You know what you have to do, and you know what the hurdle is. Why aren't you spending more time on that? Because I always found that to be a curiosity where that's where the money's at. If you can, you exponentially increase the sales amount, but it's at a much lower margin. But at that point in time, you could have been developing the ultimate raw materials because those guys aren't as selective and demanding. They are selective and demanding, but not it was near the tier one guys.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, so
because it's proven technology.
Well, yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Is it if you know the application and you know the formulation, suddenly it is a solved problem for somebody as long as they are aware of it. So let me go to a kind of an allied piece of this. So to have that discussion with an Avantor about, hey, this is a value proposition, would it be trying to engage with R&D people directly? Would it are there supplier management people who would be the right people to try and I guess how would you start an engagement like that if you were going to do it?
Well, I think the question is, of course, is where do the problems lie and who has to solve them? So the procurement people, if they have pain and headaches of not being able to find capable suppliers, they would very much be interested to know that somebody, even though they're not the savvy guys, the technology savvy guys, of course.
Right.
So you need it's kind of either or. If the researchers are aware of you, say they go to a trade show and says, these guys got some neat technology, and I got to keep that in mind, or they spoke to someone and they get that initial communication. The best would be the researcher pushes it and the procurement people look to fulfill it and do their due diligence that way. So that would be the primary way. Secondary is that ultimately your sourcing group would have to be involved because they're gonna do the contracts and pricing and on all this here. But ideally, it's the researcher says, I like X, Y, Z's for our formulation here, and this is what I'm looking at using, because they have, of course, there's a process that goes through, the product development goes through like a 5-stage process. One is getting, and at those stages is where these discussions happen. And those are done either by the product, by research, or research will own it, whether they're running that particular part of the process, or it could be even the marketing people from sometimes they own it as far as the overall development to get it finished. They're not doing any of the research work at all, but since they're working directly with, or might be the primary facing person to the tier one microelectronic company, which is usually the model they use, and usually that person's in the marketing but they're highly technically skilled marketing people, that they are overseeing all those processes that are going into making our newest cleaner for the newest process at the tier one micro company. So there's these staging and gate release processes that they're aware of, that they get presented at. Again, the research guys would own the initial. They're always at the step one that they're presenting, and something that finally works. The consequential steps don't, and until you have a working formulation, are not started yet until they get there. So the research folks own it. But how do you get the information for them? If they're looking to buy something, they're talking about a sourcing person, or they're just doing it themselves. Researchers are researchers. Some of them are lazy, some of them are active. So how they go about it is there's only a few channels, but it could be them directly. They might be working. They might know someone in the sourcing group that they can pawn things off to, and they'll give them a handful of possibilities for a particular raw material.
Well, that was actually a question that as you were talking, I got thinking about that too. Was and maybe you just can speak to what you saw in your time at well, actually probably from Baker all the way on. Were R&D people kind of given free rein or not reined in maybe to get things from wherever, or did the companies try to, or the company try to direct that to say, you can get whatever you want, but it's got to go through some sort of, even the first few grams need to come through some sort of a sourcing person inside the company so that you guys would have that visibility from the beginning. I've talked to a lot of formulators over the years, and it seems like some say, go find anything and we'll figure it out. Some say, no, we want to exercise control from the beginning. What was your experience, or what did you understand?
Well, it evolved, of course, researchers, they have the catalogs on their desk, and they would order whatever they wanted. They get educated as time goes on, trial and error issues that we have with the raw material that they selected, and so they get educated, and the answer is they should be going through the approved list of suppliers, but Lord knows when they're in the beginning of this whole thing, they're trying, any group of a class of chemical to see how, and comparing one against another, on a bench scale, they can make a formulation overnight. So they might be changing it up quite often, and then they go and say, okay, I'm going to try ethanolamine or something. Right now I've got this one, it's working, which, and then that's when the stage and gate process comes in. We got to make sure we got it locked in on a reliable source early on. So I think it still happens where they'll go back to their normal reliable sources of laboratory chemicals or reagents and then go towards the higher purity ones once they have it's chemically doing a superior job and meeting the goals. And they have been steered as to where to source those materials. So you have a good starting point. But still, when you go to, a new animal in the zoo, that's not going to be that pretty a picture. It's not going to be that perfect.
Yeah, you find out it only comes from a mine in Syria or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine that's Murphy's Law at work.
You just asked them how did they find
it. This is really helpful information, because I think one of the things I'm getting from this is there is. It sounds like there really is could be identified value in being able to both stabilize the supply chain, for lack of a better term, as well as perhaps providing better and better, truly quality, purity, as needs may dictate. And that's kind of where we're looking at where we may want to try to insert ourselves. I think that's the questions that I had. I think I'd like to hopefully reserve the right, if we have some more specifics, we would just go back through GLG and set up a follow-up interview, if that would be all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, I'm more than happy to help you and help understand and let you know what reality is from this perspective. Because as you can tell, it's very little of it's black and white. And there are those there's issues all along the way, and I think where all those different directions are, and I've certainly been exposed to and had to come up with the right response to all aspects of microelectronic supply. But I hope that one thing that you probably knew, but that as you can tell, once these processes get locked, you're not adding a new technology is the last